Archbishop of Laodicea, representative of His All Holiness, Patriarch Bartholomeus, once again, Your Excellency, Vice President of the Greek Government, Mr. Pikramenos, Mr. Rector of the National Technical University of Athens, Professor Boudoulis, and distinguished representatives of international and national organizations. Dear colleagues, it is with great pleasure that we do initiate the second International Transdisciplinary Multispectral Conference which regards the preservation of cultural heritage with cooperation, and which in the same framework is focusing on recapturing the world in crisis through culture. It is with great pleasure to present the framework of this conference. We started at 2018 with the first transdisciplinary multispectral cooperation for the preservation of cultural heritage. Παρακαλώ, μπορείτε να δίνετε εικόνα. Μπορείτε να δίνετε εικόνα, να βλέπουνε την παρουσίαση. We have started in order to present the unique experience and the developed know-how from the work of rehabilitation of the Holy Edicule in the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. It is indeed a great responsibility that NTU8 interdisciplinary team treated with respect and innovation, and this innovation was developed by various disciplines: architects, civil engineers, surveyors, engineers, materials engineers, archaeologists, historians of art and architecture, and all the data were merged and fused at the infrastructure of digital 3D documentation of the Holy Edicule, which permitted us to develop a new, as you might see here, which permitted us to develop a new holistic approach within which the multi-layer management of data was actually promising accuracy, on-time accomplishment with high quality. And this combined utilization is promising today the perspective of sustainable preservation of cultural heritage at large. It is with a great honor and pleasure that we are moving today from the Holy Sepulchre project to diffuse the innovations produced there, to cultivate communication strategies and to exemplify social accessibility, dealing with narrations, religion and science on the level of the society. Today, we perform the transfer of know-how through new European Erasmus projects, which will contribute to the future trends for preserving cultural heritage. From 2018 to 2021, we made a step forward from 13 sessions, 4 panel discussions, 104 papers, 350 conference attendees. Today we are not so many due to the pandemic, from 20 countries around the globe. Today we have 14 panel discussions of general interest, 14 sessions, 124 papers accepted out of 310 submitted, from 377 authors arriving from 33 countries. They are in proceedings of Springer and international journals. The TMM conference is a hybrid conference, not only because it is through physical presence or online, but because the panels are of free access and only the sessions, the scientific sessions, are for the registered one. This is because we are trying to serve society and implicate society within this venture. With these ideas, when you follow the panel discussions, you will see that Holy Sepulchre is still our reference. The actual innovations developed are discussed here within the Erasmus Plus strategic partnership, dealing with educational, digital, innovative cultural heritage learning activities. And it is enlightening the resilience universal discussion about climate change and natural hazards, which acting against the integrity of cultural heritage and against the biosafety of the world as well. The novel educational approach for the preservation of cultural heritage is now exemplified through the 3 master courses of NTUA, La Sapienza and Bezalel Academy, with the ambition to be diffused to all the world. Preserving compatibility, the materiality and integrity of structures and architectural authenticity is the aim concerning preservation, and at the same time, advanced non-destructive and structural techniques for diagnosis, redesign, and health monitoring are discussed at large. The earthquake and structural rehabilitation, the archaeology, archaeometry, archaeogene, bridging heritage stakeholders, science and industry, a transdisciplinary dialogue for World Heritage at Risk, the exemplary Hagia Sophia, digital heritage, a holistic approach, the research project Respect, and the Green and Blue Deal for local and regional sustainable development, which is actually applied in various isolated areas, but in historic cities and centers as well, with new reuse strategies applying the principles of circular economy. It is with great pleasures that we are sharing knowledge and experience. And we are asking for European and international recommendations for sustainable cultural heritage approaches and practices. Through all these efforts, we have the target to reorientate the conversation, to explore the current conditions and contours of the world in crisis, recapturing itself through culture and relaunching the concept of development. With these introductory notes, I would like to invite Honorable Rector of the NTUA, Professor Ludovice, to welcome you at this mainly by NTUA organized conference. And I would like to thank the International Steering Committee, the International Scientific Committee, the Executive Organizing Committee, and all the international organizations which are supporting this effort, and all the sponsors of the conference. Thank you very much.
Honorable Representative of His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, Honorable Vice President of the Greek Government, distinguished representatives of the international and national organizations, dear colleagues, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome you to the second International Conference on Transdisciplinary Multispectral Modeling and Cooperation for the Preservation of Cultural Heritage. The first in the series and today's conference are rooted in the project of the rehabilitation of the Holy Sepulchre's Holy Edicule in Jerusalem, a multifaceted pilot endeavor with key ingredients, the novelty of the approaches implemented, and featuring, among others, digital reconstruction and non-destructive techniques. The ride up to the series of these conferences was a long one, full of achievements, and to my opinion, it was a triumph of interdisciplinarity. The National Technical University of Athens group of expert and dedicated people, the chief scientists and their co-workers, brought a demanding project to a successful completion. To my capacity as director of the NTUA, I express my deep appreciation to those who deserve it for diffusing the knowledge produced through their superb work, as well as through the series of these conferences, thus strengthening the international recognition of our university. To the leader of the group and chairperson of today's conference, my colleague in the School of Chemical Engineering, Professor Tonia Moropoulou, Professor Emeritus and member of the Academy of Athens, Manolis Kores, from the School of Architecture, Professor Andreas Georgopoulos, from the School of Rural Surveying and Geoinformatics Engineering, and Professor Kostas Spirakos and Associate Professor Haris Mouzakis from the School of Civil Engineering. Today, the know-how transfer of the rehabilitation of the Holy Edicule through the Erasmus Plus Strategic Alliance Edicula keeps up with the need to preserve cultural heritage at large, applying the innovations developed so far. Today's conference further opens a universal discussion which is of national interest to Greece, investigating preservation and management strategies regarding cultural assets in the scale of historic cities. Moreover, it points to local and regional development through reuse, land and urban management, applying circular economy principles with social participation. Upon closing, I wish to affirm the commitment of the National Technical University of Athens to share knowledge and expertise towards green innovation, aiming at sustainability and resilience as they pertain to today's conference and beyond that. I hope that you will have a fruitful conference against the adversities of the pandemic. My best wishes to everybody for good health and prosperity and for the upcoming holidays.
Thank you, Rector. I have the honor to invite His Excellency, the Vice President of the Greek Government, Minister Pikramenos, to the podium for the inaugurating speech.
Honorable Representative of the Ecumenical Patriarch, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to announce today the beginning of the second international conference on innovative, interdisciplinary digital preservation of cultural heritage. As you are aware, this conference has been organized by a team of many disciplines from the National Mesovio Polytechnion. The team is led by Emeritus Professor Antonia Moropoulou, to whom we owe the completion of this once-in-a-lifetime experience of restoring the Holy Sepulchre Sanctuary canopy, a global initiative that was viewed by billions of people. The importance of Greece and the National Metrovia Polytechnion in this effort was acknowledged around the world. Today, the know-how is handed on through the Erasmus Plus Edicula in postgraduate programs in conjunction with the University of Sapienza in Rome and the Bezalel Academy of Arts in Jerusalem, ensuring the temple's active role in the restoration and development. Ladies and gentlemen, our world is undergoing dramatic changes as a result of technical advances and rapid digitization never seen before in human history. Those who are able to adapt, they will succeed. And anyone working in a competitive atmosphere should keep up with this speed. As I said, the beginning was made a few years ago with a digital report on the restoration of the Holy Canopy of the Holy Sepulchre. Today, not just Greeks, but also everyone in the free world can feel as they are a part of history by fully utilizing the capabilities of digital 3D technology and transdisciplinary interactive presentation. The Holy Sepulchre is alive for all humanity. This has already happened for other monumental sites, such as ancient Olympia and Mount Athos, through the Athonite Digital Ark. In the future, it could expand to more monumental sites, including even the sacred rock of Acropolis. These monuments are being brought to life, internationalized, and transformed into modern pillars of knowledge and wisdom, worthy ambassadors of the ecumenical culture thanks to digital technology. From the other hand, the recent election of our country to the UNESCO World Heritage Committee for the next 4 years is both a springboard for the future and a reward for what has been accomplished thus far. It is a significant distinction in the World Heritage landscape for Greece. Our goal is to ensure the effective conservation of the world's cultural and natural resources heritage, which is currently facing the challenging effects of the climate crisis, as well as the maintenance and reinforcement of monuments of universal worth in all the world's geographical areas. And with these words, I want to thank you all for your attention and wish the best with your conference. Thank you.
It is with great pleasure that we received the message of His All Holiness, the Ecumenic Patriarch Bartholomew, and I'm going to ask the Reverend Metropolitis Laodikias, Mr. Theodoritos, to convey it to you.
Message by His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew to the Second International Conference on Trans-Ibery Multi-Pectoral Modeling and Operation of the Preservation of Cultural Heritage distinguished organizers and participants, it is a pleasure and privilege to respond to the gracious invitation of Professor Antonia Moropoulou, International Steering Committee, in order to convey a formal message to your esteemed conference at the Viennidis Foundation of Athens. This second gathering for the preservation of cultural heritage is entitled with recounting the world of crisis through culture. It is an unfortunate reality and tragedy that our world continues to experience the painful social, cultural, and ecological repercussion of a global pandemic which has the entire planet and the people into seemingly turmoil and suffering. We often underline that a balanced spiritual perspective can bring hope and healing to our dividing international community and natural environment. This is precisely the worldview that we have sought to proclaim and promote over the last 30 years since our election to the throne of Constantinople. And we have done this through inter-Orthodox, inter-Christian, and inter-religious dialogue. We have also achieved this through interdisciplinary awareness and action, precisely because we are convinced that our responses to the official challenges that we faced must be collective and ecumenical. Nevertheless, preserving our historical memory and cultural heritage is another sacred offering and service that aspires the restoration and reconciliation to preservation and sustainability of the precious gifts of creation and civilization. Your disciplines are truly capable of recapturing the attention and interest of the world through the terms of culture and means of addressing the multidimensional contemporary crisis. All of your disciplines are ways of responding to the world, ways of relating to nature, ways of respecting creation. What is required then is a change of orientation, a new set of values, a transition from unrestrained exploitation to environmental and social sensitivity. And the way to achieve this is through the paradigm of humble collaboration, which is contained in the very title of your interdisciplinary team and organization. This is the approach of the ecumenical patriarchate, and it is precisely that we are all called to communicate to our communities. It is vital to draw connections between science and religion, between culture and heritage, between ecology and economy, between education and engineering, between technology and archaeology, between tourism and industry, as well as between information and communication. Finally, this awareness reminds us also of the accountability of our generation to future generation. This is surely a lesson that we have learned from the current pandemic, that we must listen and learn from other disciplines. That no one is saved unless everyone is saved. We wish you every blessing in your presentations and deliberations. May God continue to reward your willingness to work together for the benefit of His people and His world.
Thank you very much, Your Reverend, for transferring the inspiring message of His All Holiness the Ecumenic Patriarch. His Beatitude, the Archbishop of Athens and all Greece, Mr. Hieronymus, has entrusted me to convey to you his message, which I will read as it came in Greek, but you will be able to follow it in English. Χαιρετίζω την έναρξη του δεύτερου Διεθνούς Επιστημονικού Συνεδρίου με θέμα καινοτόμος, διεπιστημονική, ψηφιακή διατήρηση της πολιτιστικής κληρονομιάς, επαναπροσδιορίζοντας την ταυτότητα του κόσμου σε κρίση μέσα από τον πολιτισμό, το οποίο διοργανώνεται από το Εθνικό Μετσόβιο Πολυτεχνείο σε συνεργασία με το Τεχνικό Επιμελητήριο της Ελλάδας και διεθνείς φορείς. Η πορεία και η προαίρεση των ανθρώπων και των λαών μέσα στην ιστορία ανταποκρίνεται και αποτυπώνεται στον πολιτισμό, στην πολιτιστική κληρονομιά, στη συλλογική ταυτότητα. Αναμφίβολα είναι ζωτικής σημασίας η διάσωση των παντοειδών μνημείων του πολιτισμού, ώστε να προσφερθούν προς μελέτη και έρευνα τόσο στη δική μας κοινωνία, όσο και για την συμμετοχή της. Το ζητούμενο είναι να έλθουμε σε κοινωνία, σε ζωογόνο συνάντηση με τα μνημεία και την πολιτιστική κληρονομιά, να τα αξιοποιήσουμε, να τα θέσουμε όσο το δυνατόν εκ νέου εις χρήση, να τους επιτρέψουμε να φωτίσουν τις προοπτικές μας. Μόνο έτσι θα μιλάμε για ζωντανή παράδοση, με δύναμη μεταμορφωτική για τον κόσμο. Δεν είναι, όπως καταλαβαίνει κανείς, θέμα μόνο των μηχανικών και των θετικών επιστημών, αλλά θέμα που ανοίγεται στο πεδίο και των ανθρωπιστικών επιστημών. Η προσπάθεια αυτή πρέπει να είναι και καινοτόμος και διεπιστημονική. Υπάρχει η λαμπρή εμπειρία της αποκατάστασης του Ιερού Κουβουκλίου του Παναγίου Τάφου, καθώς και η εμπειρία του σχετικού συνεδρίου που πραγματοποιήθηκε το 2018. Το παρόν συνέδριο θα οδηγεί στην προβληματική περαιτέρω η συγκυρία της πανδημίας, η οποία εγείρει θέματα αυτοσυνειδησίας και νοήματος ζωής και απαιτεί επανέβρεση των θεμελιωδών αξιών του πολιτισμού μας. Διευρύνει επιτακτικά τις στοχεύσεις του συνεδρίου, καθώς και τις προσδοκίες μας. Σας συγχαίρω και εύχομαι ο Κύριος ημών Ιησούς Χριστός να ευλογήσει πλουσίως τις εργασίες του συνεδρίου. Ο Αρχιεπίσκοπος Αθηνών και Πάσης Ελλάδος, Ιερώνυμος. Ο χαιρετισμός του Προέδρου του ΤΕ θα διαβαστεί στο τέλος, γιατί του έτυχε ένα μικρό ατύχημα. The President of the Technical Chamber of Greece had a small accident, so I will read his message at the end. And I'm calling now the President of ETEC, which is the Cyprus Scientific and Technical Chamber, organizing Konstantis Konstantinou.
Thank you. Panayotis Pikramenos, Honorable Representative of Ecumenic Patriarch Bartholomew, dear President of International Steering Committee of the Conference, Professor Moropoulou, dear Rector of the National Technical University of Athens, Professor Andreas Boudouvis, esteemed experts in the field of cultural heritage, distinguished guests, dear friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly honored to be here today to welcome you on behalf of the Technical Chamber of Cyprus and be part of an extremely interesting discussion of the technical and culture setting we need to create in order to reclaim and protect our cultural heritage. It is true that until recently, cultural heritage has been absent from the mainstream sustainable development debate, despite its crucial importance to societies and the wide acknowledgement of its great potential to contribute to society's social, economy, and environment goals. It is also true that Europe is starting to acknowledge the value of cultural heritage as one of the key pillars for achieving a sustainable, thriving European future. Despite this, cultural heritage assets, both touchable and intangible, protected and unprotected, are continuously under threat from a variety of economic, sociological, and environmental pressures. It is thus evident that an alternative approach to cultural heritage governance is needed in order to preserve cultural heritage in new and different way, and ultimately in a more inclusive and sustainable manner. According to recent transdisciplinary research, and this alternative approach requires transparency, openness, and holistic approaches and processes that engage a broad range of stakeholders to foster inclusive decision-making and share long-term responsibility for adaptively reusing cultural heritage assets. Technology constitutes a key asset for achieving this goal. Modern technology can be a main factor in conservation and preservation of fragile, sensible heritage assets, ensuring their sustainability and durability. Similarly, the value of utilizing technology in order to educate the public and communities about their heritage, enhance the experience of the visitors, and boost audience development cannot be stressed enough. Overall, new technologies can give a completely new sustainable life to cultural heritage, allowing us to document, preserve, evaluate, and popularize cultural heritage. In that scope, this conference provides valuable insight into this emerging transdisciplinary scientific field, raise awareness on the subject, and others, or a platform for the exchange of ideas between distinguished speakers. Unfortunately, in Cyprus, we have a long way to go in order to efficiently protect cultural heritage. The Chamber's efforts have been focusing on raising public awareness on the issue on the one hand, and the implementation of effective public policies in the cultural heritage sector on the other hand. At the same time, we aim to educate our members and engage them in the process, ensuring that cultural heritage restoration and management policies will be aligned with broader sustainable development goals. In that context, I am fully happy to be here and be part of the knowledge-sharing experiences and recommendation about sustainable cultural heritage approaches and practices. I'm sure that this opportunity will offer us great ideas and new tools to achieve our goals. In conclusion, I would like to warmly congratulate the organizers of the conference in this challenging thematic field and wish them every success. I would also like to seize the opportunity to extend special thanks on behalf of the Chamber to Professor Moropoulou for her long-lasting contribution to the mission of the Technical Chamber of Cyprus. Thank you very much.
We are passing now to our strategic ally, National Geographic, and I have the honor to invite my friend, archaeologist Fred Herbert, to take the floor online. Is Fred connected? Is Fred connected? Thank you.
Greetings. I'm Frederick Hebert, the archaeologist in residence at the National Geographic Society. It is a pleasure to address this distinguished conference of cultural heritage stakeholders from around the world. One of the most important recent cultural heritage preservation projects was the conservation and restoration of the Holy Edicule in Jerusalem, carried out under the direction of Professor Antonio Morpoulou from the National Technical University of Athens. The Holy Edicule is a structure at the epicenter of Western civilization, in the heart of Jerusalem. Here, a shrine was built by Constantine in the 4th century, just above the traditional location where Christ was buried. The structure was partly destroyed by invaders in the 7th century AD, destroyed again in AD 1009, and the structure was rebuilt as a church in the mid-11th century. The very center, the Edicule, was later altered by the Crusaders and restored in the 16th and finally early 19th centuries. Its current form encloses all of these earlier construction phases. By the beginning of this century, the building was in dire need of conservation. In late 2015, National Geographic learned about the church's interest in the conservation of the Holy Edicule and the desire of the church to use the best, highest tech architectural conservation possible through the National Technical University of Athens. Clearly, such an important project needed to be told to the widest possible audience. This led to the strategic alliance between National Geographic and the National Technical University of Athens, in agreement with the custodians of the Holy Sepulchre. With this cooperation, we could communicate the monument and the project to the whole world. National Geographic could do this with our global audience of more than 700 million viewers and readers. I would like to mention how grateful we are to Father Alex Karloutsos of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America, who contributed to bringing together the Church, the World Monuments Fund, the National Technical University of Athens, and the National Geographic Society to make this important conservation project happen. Following a year of planning after Easter of 2016, the restoration and conservation of the Holy Edicule began with a daunting schedule of being ready to open for Easter in 2017. One of the biggest challenges was the requirement to keep the shrine open to the public for almost the entire duration of the project. The exception to this last rule took place in October 2016 when the marble slab covering the heart of the Edicule was opened. This was not done out of idle curiosity, but to allow the conservation team the opportunity to seal the holy rock for long-term conservation. On October 26th, after the last visitors and pilgrims left the church in the evening, the doors were locked and the conservation team slowly opened the slab for the first time in several centuries. Peering down, they found a second slab engraved with a cross lying on the bedrock, the Holy Rock of Jerusalem. The silence in anticipation of hearing what they felt in this very sacred spot was unique. It was a moment of great scientific understanding, historic conservation, and a humbling and overwhelming feeling of humanity. All this in full view of the entire world through media. In addition to global media coverage, this project was featured in a National Geographic documentary, a cover story in our iconic magazine, and a major exhibition project that featured a 3D fly-through of the shrine for visitors who had a feeling of being transported to Jerusalem from our headquarters museum in Washington, D.C. By early 2017, the conservation work was completed, and Professor Morpoulou stated that the building can now stand for another 1,000 years. In addressing the conservation of a 1,600-year-old structure, factors such as the risks of climate change, the risks of earthquakes, and the issues of other natural and anthropogenic causes were taken into consideration. As we maintained a focus on the integrity of historical architectural restoration, of compatibility of materials, architectural stabilization, and cleaning, these naturally led to observations about our history, architectural history, absolute dating, and archaeology. We will soon hear from scholars, scientists, and experts in 14 separate panel discussions, delving deeply into all of these topics, with what we hope will lead to a roadmap for future best practices in the preservation of cultural heritage. Thank you.
National Geographic brought the news to 3 billion people around the globe. That's another dimension. And this project became feasible due to World Monuments Fund, who started financing it. I have the honor to have with us President Emerita now. Then she was president of World Monuments Fund, Dr. Bonnie Bergham, with her today's capacity as President of the Cultural Heritage Finance Alliance, which is enlarging the scope, and she will let us know about this. Thank you, Bonnie.
It's a pleasure to be here for the second convening of this conference. I was here in 2018, and the project that we worked on together with Antonia, the Holy Edicule, was very much a feature of that program, and I'm looking forward to hearing about the progress as well as seeing that extraordinary project in the relief of a couple more years as more scientific evidence is gathered and as the world begins to absorb it as a monument that has been transformed through conservation. As was mentioned, I was for 30 years the head of the World Monuments Fund, which is a New York-based nonprofit organization that's dedicated to heritage conservation through advocacy and catalytic project funding, like the funding that we committed for that project. But in that role, I was painfully aware of the severe limitations of financing available to support our work, and that's largely what I have been preoccupied with since my retirement from the organization. I was also aware that other sectors, and particularly our cousins in nature conservation, have been able to develop innovative strategies and take greater advantage of new technologies than we have, as well as diverse forms of financing to accomplish their work. Things like bonds, debt swaps, carbon trading, alternative energy development, and the syndication of those new processes, which are things that the heritage conservation world has only begun to embrace in a very limited way. We have tremendous assets at our disposal, but we've not yet learned how to make them economically sustainable. I wondered why this is the case when our heritage plays such a pivotal role in society by providing nurturing environments for all human activity. And in fact, in recent years, government financing for this work has suffered because of the important function of our sector, as well as its positive impacts, are not well enough known and understood as part of sustainable development. I'm picking up on the theme that has already been raised by the distinguished representative from Cyprus. And I'd like to dwell for a moment on what we can bring to this agenda. From the perspective of social development, when we conserve, reuse, and revitalize historic places, we are recreating an environment that can thrive and sustain its community, as well as it did in the same environment in times past. Physical improvement in quality of life sets the stage for health and well-being, which are fundamental for delivering on the promises of human rights, equity, and social justice that are being made today. And so when we envision the future of a place, it's important to start with what exists and what has existed in that place, and what the values are for the people who live there, not only for cultural reasons, but because it makes good sense developmentally and socially. From the environmental perspective, preserving historic resources is a short path to carbon reduction, the key goal of climate change mitigation and adaptation today. Construction is the source of 40% of the world's carbon emissions. Historic structures have embodied energy from the time that they were built in the past. They tend to use less carbon for operation than new buildings. And reusing existing buildings avoids sending building materials to landfill. The net gain represents about 11% reduction in the carbon footprint of urban development. And so it's an important contribution. Every city in the world should have an existing building reuse policy for carbon reduction, and many already do. and they've triggered billions of dollars of investment in building rehabilitation. Reusing heritage buildings strongly enhances a city's ability to regenerate itself sustainably and meet carbon reduction goals. And from the viewpoint of governance, I reiterate that with increased demands on governmental resources, the role of governments as the sole steward of our historic legacy is changing. It's widely understood in our field today that decisions about what to preserve and how to do it no longer reside solely in cultural ministries, but involve many sectors: education, business, technical innovation, tourism, mobility, planning, housing, among others. What we need to do is build a supportive ecosystem for our decision-making around historic places that embrace all these voices. Our sector urgently needs to learn how to do this successfully, and governments now need to be enablers and conveners to envision the outcomes that are desired, encourage the civil society to take a lead role, and incentivize non-governmental investment. As we try to envision life beyond COVID, it's important to embrace broad goals that bring progress in solving economic, environmental, and social problems and the inequities of our time. But it's also important to apply these goals to the physical places where we all live our lives. If we can successfully balance development with preservation of resources in our communities, especially historic resources, we can contribute a lot to the world's sustainability agenda. There's a big opportunity before us. To realize its potential, the heritage sector needs to insist on a place at the table where sustainability goals are set, where they are measured in relation to their impact, and where their financing decisions are being made. I'll be talking more about how we might achieve this alignment in the course of this conference. But for now, I'd like to thank you again for this opportunity to speak and to learn from the viewpoints of all the others who are represented here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Honorable Rector. I know you have to go back to NTUA. I would like to acknowledge the contribution to the project and to the conference of my colleague, Professor Andreas Georgopoulos, who is now a member of the International Executive Committee of ICOMOS, the International Council of Monuments and Sites, and ask him to precede the Secretary General of ICOMOS, who is going to convey the message. Could you please present him?
Thank you very much. As Professor Moropoulos said, I have the honor to be elected at the International Board of ICOMOS, and our Secretary General, Professor Mario Santana, is going to give a welcoming address to this symposium. He's a professor of conservation, now in Canada, in Carleton University in Ottawa, but formerly he was for some 20 years in Belgium in the Catholic University of Leuven. So I think we should all listen to what he is going to say.
Connect with Secretary General of ICOMOS.
Second International Conference on Transdisciplinary Multi-Inspectoral Modeling and Cooperation for the Preservation of Cultural Heritage, Recapturing the World in Crisis Through Culture, which is held in Athens, Greece, in this December 2021. And on behalf of Dr. Teresa Patricio, the International Council of Monuments and Sites President, ICOMOS, and myself, Mario Santana, Secretary General of this organization, I would like to welcome you to this very important conference happening today. I wish I could be there with you in Athens or connected through video conferences. Unfortunately, I live in a place where there is 6 hours of time difference. So I am very happy at least I can convey my words, my sincere words of encouragement for this conference, which is also organized by the Eugenides Foundation in Athens. And I was looking through the program and I see there is extremely engaging presentations and panels, discussions about climate change, natural hazards, and pandemics, the Holy Sepulchre Rehabilitation Project. I have been visiting the church in Jerusalem for many years, so I'm very familiar with the threats and also with the ongoing rehabilitation project. So I wish you all the best for these days of discussion and exchange, and looking forward seeing you in any other ICOMOS related activity. I welcome you to become a member of our International Council. We are a professional organization with nearly 11,000 members, with national committees across the world, and with many opportunities for emerging professionals, consolidated professionals, to exchange and engage in the conservation and providing expertise to the world. Also, ICOMOS is the advisory body to the UNESCO World Heritage Committee in the decisions of nomination and monitoring of sites. So I invite you to go to our website, www.icomos.org, get more information, and also if you are located in Athens especially, I will invite you to become a member of the National Committee of Greece, which is also a very active national committee with a lot of strong ideas and exchanges. So all the best, and looking forward seeing you again anywhere in the world. All the best. Bye.
With the National Committee of ICOMOS, indeed. Unfortunately, today they have their General Assembly. However, ICOMOS is here. I have the pleasure to invite the President of the International Committee, CIPA, Heritage Documentation, Associate Professor Efstratios Stylianidis, who is Vice Rector of Research and Lifelong Learning at the Aristotle University of Salonika, which, by the way, it's represented today by Professor Spathis. Χρόνια πολλά, Στράτος.
Ευχαριστώ. Thank you so much. So, good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege and pleasure to welcome you in this conference, the second international conference on the transdisciplinary multispectral
Λίγο πιο δυνατά, Στράτο, πιο δυνατά.
Of cultural heritage. Now it's better?
Okay.
Is there a problem?
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm hearing myself as well. So what shall I do? If I close my speakers, now it's better? Is it better now? Yes? Okay. So it's my pleasure and privilege to welcome you to this conference as the president of CIPA, a dynamic international organization that has twin responsibilities. From one side, keeping up with technology and ensuring its usefulness for cultural heritage conservation, education, and dissemination. An international non-profit organization that endeavors to transfer knowledge from the measurement and visualization sciences to the disciplines of cultural heritage recording, conservation, and documentation. The cultural heritage community, as many other scientific communities nowadays across the world, is going through an unprecedented global crisis, a crisis that is affecting our lives, our livelihoods, and of course the social and cultural structure of our societies. The COVID-19 crisis has impacted every dimension of the cultural heritage value chain, value chain from research to conservation and protection, and of course to training and education. However, expect for the challenges that we need to face in order to tackle all this socio-economic, cultural, and financial and other implications. We do need to recognize the opportunities that rise for the cultural heritage sector. Everything is changing fast in our community as well. Let's see, for instance, how artificial intelligence is in the heritage domain. It is not always the today knowledge of our field. It is more of critical thinking, well-rounded research and education, perspective of how to invent and imagine things. At the same time, the skills that are going to be necessary in the future will not necessarily be only quantitative skills, but they are qualitative perspectives that will make all of us more relevant for the benefit of cultural heritage. 3D modeling, but also digital innovation in general, provides new opportunities to preserve the cultural content and make cultural heritage more accessible to all audiences. Museums and cultural organizations that embrace technology are able to offer innovative visitor experiences, as well as let the public access exhibitions remotely to see material that is not on display. At the same time, the European Commission and of course other international organizations recommends member states to accelerate the digitization of all cultural heritage monuments and sites to protect and preserve those at risk and boost, of course, their use in domains such as education, sustainable tourism, and cultural creative sectors. The European Commission encourages to digitize by 2030 all monuments and sites that are at risk of degradation, and half of those highly frequented by tourists, and proposes a common European data space for cultural heritage. This scientific community, all of us, all of you on physical presence there today, and all of us on this hybrid conference needs to follow the stream of innovation without delay and support the recovery and resilience of the cultural heritage sector in the near and longer term future. I would like to congratulate the organizers of this conference, and I'm pretty sure it will be a very successful and productive conference for all the participants. Thank you so much.
I invite to be connected my dear friend Liminaidis, who is acting as advisor to the Secretary General. She was Deputy Secretary General as well, of the Organization of the World Heritage Cities. Lee, you are having the floor.
Representatives of the clergy, Mr. Vice President of the Greek government, President of the steering committee of this conference, and distinguished representatives of international institutions and from academia. I would first like to thank the President of the International Steering Committee of the conference and dear friend, Professor Antonio Moropoulou, for inviting the Organization of World Heritage Cities, the OWHC, to participate in this, the second International Conference on Transdisciplinary Multispectral Modeling and Cooperation for the Preservation of Cultural Heritage, recapturing the world in crisis through culture. It was with great interest and pleasure that I represented the OWHC at the first conference, during which issues relevant to the objectives of our organization were addressed. I look forward to this edition, during which other pertinent issues will be addressed, such as circular economy strategies and the challenges of today's world in crisis. Founded in 1993, the Organization of World Heritage Cities brings together the cities from around the globe that have on their territory a site that is inscribed by UNESCO on the World Heritage List. Within the organization, these cities are represented by their mayors and with the active participation of their heritage management specialists. The mission of the organization is to make a relevant and constructive contribution for the holistic, sustainable development of its member cities. Primary objectives of the OWHC have been to promote the implementation of the World Heritage Convention, to develop a sense of solidarity, and to encourage cooperation and the exchange of information and expertise on matters of conservation and management among its member cities. Throughout our World Congresses, regional conferences, workshops, and seminars, as well as our projects and programs, the OWHC realizes these objectives. Historic cities have often expressed the need to develop advanced systems and tools for the mapping of built heritage and of its state, that is, diagnostics of pathology and decay, within the historic centers. The cities have also expressed the need to set up integrated knowledge-based decision-making systems that embody advanced diagnostic and monitoring tools. These systems combine in an effective way the structural, historical, architectural, as well as building materials and environmental data in order to assure the compatibility and authenticity of the structures, and thus to optimize their sustainability and to ensure that the historic buildings can be used while satisfying the occupants' needs and standards of living and working. Livability has always been a priority of the OWHC. The Scientific Symposium of the World Congress of the OWHC, the 7th World Congress, held in Rhodes, Greece in 2003, had as its theme Keeping Heritage Alive, Education and Training for the Preservation and Promotion of Cultural Heritage. Among other topics, the symposium dealt with the subject of research. I would like to take this opportunity to thank once again Professor Moropoulou for her contribution to the success of that symposium as coordinator of the scientific committee. One of the concepts developed at the symposium was that of historic cities as open labs for research. The symposium proposed that the evolution in the field of cultural heritage protection demands validation of newly developed concepts and strategies in situ. Historic cities can and definitely should be used as open labs, transferring, applying, and validating knowledge produced. Now, this recommendation has served the OWHC well in the years following, formulating our policies and planning our projects. The recommendations of the Rhodes Symposium also emphasize the need for mayors of historic cities to realize that cooperation with relevant research, academic, and educational institutions is essential in order to achieve the development of knowledge-based decision-making systems. Furthermore, the revitalization of historic cities goes beyond the preservation and conservation of their fabric. It requires a process that takes into account all the cultural values embedded in the spatial and physical components of the place, and involves residents and all the relevant participants from the public and private sectors to ensure the appropriate and sustainable conservation and development of the historic centers. In the conclusions and recommendations of the Scientific Committee, keeping heritage alive was perceived as a situation where sustainable cities include the active participation of the public in the development processes. In such a model of city development, while research becomes a tool to define new concepts and investigate effective, innovative, and compatible planning and intervention techniques and materials for sustainable preservation of historic cities, education becomes a necessity to keep societies informed. The diffusion of the advanced know-how and methodologies produced by research requires proper educational programs to build new capacities needed for the protection of cultural heritage within the cities. To this end, the Auditorium serves as a channel to its member cities for the dissemination of technology, research results, and knowledge of information developed. Our cities participate in training programs, some of which focus on the recovery of traditional techniques and knowledge, especially construction techniques and materials, in order to apply reliable conservation procedures. Moreover, a priority of our newly elected Secretary General, Mr. Michael Detis, is for our member cities to take part in pilot projects, putting into practice the methodologies that have been developed. As for the principles of circular economy, there are many instances of adaptive reuse policies among OWHC members, where interventions have given new functions to historic buildings and spaces. In Rhodes, my hometown, comprehensive interventions have been and continue to be made on many monumental complexes in the medieval city, which have assumed new roles, having primarily a social function and integrating them into the life of modern roads. I would like to note that many of the interventions in the medieval city were made possible as a result of the agreement of cooperation that was signed in 1984 by the Ministry of Culture, the City of Rhodes, and the Archaeological Receipts Fund to finance and carry out specific projects. The agreement expired in 2003. Since that time, Rhodians have lived in hope of its renewal. As it has been delayed, perhaps a provision for the funding of reuse projects could be included. As for the world in crisis, from the onset of the COVID era, the perceptions of urban challenges and strategies have changed significantly and suddenly, calling on our cities to redefine their actions to achieve greater resilience. By understanding urban resilience as the degree of flexibility with which cities can respond to change, World Heritage cities can indeed be seen as models of resilience in the face of threats from natural or health risks and from social, political, or economic crises. Although World Heritage cities are highly vulnerable, they have the assets to weather the worst situations because they can learn from their past to develop future action. They have proven many times in the past decades and centuries that they can face major challenges and adapt to new realities. I look forward to deliberations on these and other issues in the next 3 days, and I thank you for giving me, on behalf of the Organization of World Heritage Cities, the opportunity to speak to you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lee. We will pass to the director of the UNESCO Chair on Digital Heritage, Dr. Marinos Ioannidis, a very good friend who is always contributing not only to the conference, but to our advances in cultural heritage. Marinos, you're having the floor.
Thank you very much, Tonia. Honorable guests, Your Excellencies and distinguished guests, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. 18 years ago, I had the pleasure to receive an invitation from that time unknown person to me to attend and give a keynote at an event at the Technical Chamber of Greece here in Athens. It was a special day. I had to decide to go or not to go, and I came. I tried to give the presentation. Once when I touched the microphone, the system crashed, collapsed. And I had to wait until the afternoon. But since then, we are together and we are working closely and in a very successful way. So we are talking today about the 21st century, the century which has been declared as the century of the digital era. We do whatever we are doing today with the help and support, full support of a computer, of the so-called smart devices. Without their support, we are not able to do anything today, or almost nothing. We are talking at the same time about digital galleries, digital libraries, digital archives, digital museums, digital monuments, digital sites. Thousands of years ago, here in Athens, a mythology was invented, was created. And it was a small story about a goddess named Mnemosyne, who had 9 daughters. The 10 ladies were responsible to preserve the memory of the Greeks. They had even a temple dedicated to them. The name of the temple still exists in all the languages of the world, is extremely well preserved as another one word invented here in Athens. It's museum. And if you go in all the national museums around the world, you will find seats of the Hellenic civilization. But you have to go to see them, to visit the museums. But we are talking now today about the digital era, the 21st century. In the 21st century, can you imagine, can we as Greeks, the modern Greek civilization can afford it to have a virtual museum around the world without the evidence of the Greek civilization, ancient civilization? Imagine just only that. And imagine the impact of, we are now at the beginning of the 21st century, of the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, the generations to come, to be involved and actively to walk in the digital era, for our kids and our grandchildren not to have access to the memory of the past in the so-called virtual museums. Why? Why we missed the opportunity to do what? To digitize our story, our memory, our past. Of this, what Pope Francis mentioned in his speech a few weeks ago here in Athens, here is where, and that comes now, another one very famous, worldwide word invented here in Athens, democracy. Here is where democracy was invented, and here is where the civilization, a part of the human civilization was born. And imagine this world without your civilization, he mentioned in his speech, his starting words in his speech. But I would like also how pure would be this world without the Greek civilization and the impact of the Greek civilization in the world. I would like also to recall the words from the speech of President Obama when he visited Athens. And the first thing that he did was what? to go and visit the Parthenon, the symbol of democracy, and so on. So it is extremely important, ladies and gentlemen. If we miss the opportunity to digitize now, under the extreme environmental threats, human threats, distractions around the world, and so on, we will miss the opportunity to do what? To hand over to the next generations to come a piece of the memory that we received. And that's a very, very, very crucial point in the human history, especially also us. And to close, I would like to follow the words of the last speaker and say only that what Plato wrote in his 13th book when Solon was criticized from an ancient priest when he visited Athens, when he saw that the Greeks were not preserving their past. And the climate change on that time destroyed, because of fire, because of flooding, and so on, earthquakes, the memory of the Greeks. And Solon asked the ancient Egyptian priest, how do you do that then in Egypt? He said, we document, we preserve our memory in our temples. That's why still exists in their temples the story of the past in Egypt. And if someone comes and destroys that, then gods will take care of that person. So it was a system to preserve. And if we don't digitize, and if we miss this opportunity, that's us, it's our fault, and we have to do that. And congratulations, Tonya, once again, for the initiative. Congratulations for the years long of hard work that you did here in this area. And of course, for the emeritus professorship. Yeah, thank you very much, Tonya.
Thank you. Thank you, Marinos. And I have the pleasure now, we are connected, to invite Professor Peter De Vries on behalf of European Society for Engineering Education. Peter, you are having the floor.
Good morning to all of you. And especially to Tonia Moropoulou, as the initiator, the organizer, and host of the conference, but also as a former vice president of CEFI. Thank you for the invitation to contribute to the conference. I want to underline the importance of the initiative and also the work being done directly related with the well-being of our societies in turbulent times. I think the conference offers a unique opportunity to join the discussion about the state of the art and the future of engineering education in the context of preservation of cultural heritage in Europe and worldwide. And the European Society for Engineering Education, as you might know, is an international association of more than 300 members. These are higher engineering institutions, professional societies, student associations, academic staff, engineers, companies within Europe and worldwide. The objectives of our organization is to contribute to the development and improvement of engineering education and the position of the engineering professionals in society. We all know that, for example, in Europe, we do not have enough engineers, or maybe it's better to say we do not have enough engineers that have the right skills to really handle the difficulties we are facing to move forward. And so what we try to do as organization is to provide appropriate services and promote information about engineering education to all the members, to really push the communication, because that's one of the issues that is really needed. So we also promote cooperation between industry and those engaged in education of engineers. So we are more or less a intermediate organization between members, other scientific societies, international organizations. And what we really aiming to do is to promote the European dimension of higher engineering education curriculum. Now, from what values do we start? And I can tell you that the conference, the last conference, and especially time in between, has influenced the value discussion in our organization. We have had discussions about creativity, professionalism, engagement, responsibility, respect for diversity, different cultures, multidisciplinarity, openness, and certainly also sustainability. So the conference is not just a moment in time, but apparently the conference influences the thinking and decision making, which is, I think, a wonderful result. Now, SAFE is committed to elements like diversity, equality, inclusion within the engineering education community. And we will continue to review policies and practices and try to work as close together as possible with other organizations on this. Now, we do have some priorities, like, can you make engineering education attractive enough? What about capacity building? Of course, what about the digital world? And I just want to mention, one development that's taking place. So most work is being done within the organization by special interest groups. And there are very different interest groups, focusing, for example, on online learning, on, like I said, capacity building, on long life learning, and these kind of things. But what we notice is that at the moment, the special interest group on ethics in engineering education is flourishing, because there is an enormous need to look at engineering from this ethical point of view. And one issue that pops up there is the need for attention for local, regional, national, but the diversity in the ethical discussion is a very, very important point as far as we can see. And that also emphasizes that technology, more or less, make us think that everything should be connected, could be connected, which is true, but we should not forget how we are connected to our local and regional roots. Again, thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the conference, and I wish all participants a fruitful being together in the days ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. As we've heard, in Europe there is a lack of engineers, but in Greece there are plenty. I have the honor to present the message of the President of the Technical Chamber of Greece. Could you please provide it to the screen? This conference is being co-organized with the support of the Technical Chamber of Greece, because the exceptional project at the Holy Edicule of the Holy Sepulchre was a project not only of research and advanced engineering planning, but a project of engineering on the technical level of implementation as well. My colleague, Giorgos Stasinos, the president of the Technical Chamber, is mentioning the interface between the interdisciplinary scientific team and the technical work at the work site. Permit me to read it. Dear distinguished guests, esteemed academics and researchers, dear colleagues, I would like to welcome you in Athens for the second TMM CH conference. The Technical Chamber of Greece is co-organizing this conference along with our academic colleagues in National Technical University of Athens because we strongly believe in the necessity to advance our knowledge on the preservation of our monuments. So as co-organizers, as well as the professional body of Greek engineers, we are not only welcoming you, but we are eager to receive your input. Not only do we want to advance our knowledge, but we need your scientific results to help us achieve new targets. As you probably know, the Greek state is already in the forefront of policy debate on a global scale regarding the preservation of cultural heritage and especially monuments in front of the challenges of climate change. It is important that we engineers, scientists, and professionals need to learn from you, since we need to address these challenges with new methodologies and new approaches. And we feel proud that a Greek scientific team of NTUA under Professor Moropoulou contributed decisively to a high profile, maybe the highest ever and difficult preservation project of transnational cooperation and global impact. I think we can all agree that a special highlight is deserved to the works and exemplary character of the Holy Edicules Rehabilitation Project of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. Firstly, because we can all understand the meaning it has to millions, billions maybe, of people worldwide. Science supporting faith, addressing needs of centuries. Secondly, because it proves in one of the most difficult fields, the projects of extreme difficulty and various risks can be executed successfully with multilateral and interdisciplinary cooperation based on solid as well as breakthrough engineering. Thirdly, because we all can use results and learn further based on the necessity of integrated documentation, diagnosis, and continuous scientific monitoring, evaluation and scientific support in decision-making throughout the project. Fourthly, because it is a project of continuous cooperation and interaction in real time among the worksite team, the interdisciplinary scientific team, and also the owners of the project, guardians of the Holy Tomb. Dear colleagues, I believe that we can all agree on the importance of interdisciplinary synthesis and methodology through holistic digital documentation. These new territories for works that happen over centuries are important not only for science and culture, but also for the technical world in the present day. For example, it is important because of the capacity building that has been created and brings the Technical Chamber of Greece in synergy with the National Technical University of Athens. It helps hands-on to determine, for example, qualifications and skills required from engineers in order to undertake these professional activities in preservation and restoration of monuments. Today, we are all particularly interested in addressing the challenges as well as exploring new opportunities created by the natural and cultural environment in an age of unprecedented crisis. We want to find new ways that technology will help us in the direction of sustainable development to address the challenges of climate change and the economic crisis. Dear guests, the Technical Chamber of Greece is the co-organizer of the second, just like the first, international conference, TMM CH, but it's also a standalone conference. We steadily address the issue. The Technical Chamber of Greece, therefore, together with the National Technical University of Athens and the Ministry for the Environment and Energy, prioritized a relevant TMM CH panel discussion as a post-event of Researchers' Night at NTUA 2021. The Technical Chamber of Greece also participates in the AI research project concerning the local development of isolated areas based on the exploitation of cultural heritage, with NTUA as coordinator. We welcome you to the second TMM International Conference, and we expect the results concerning the innovations that you transfer and implement. We strongly believe in cooperation and we advocate for the use of these scientific results in policy and society. Thank you very much, President of Technical Chamber of Greece.